is we're going to, run down through some things that are going on with Ring of Honor, your HD deal net, which is no longer in existence. Thank Jesus for that. Um, you know, and we're going to talk a little bit about your career, and we're going to, reflect back on what you've been doing and what you got coming up. So he said, okay, cool, call me up and we'll do the interview. So I called Jimmy Jacobs up, unaware that he's going to do the interview in heel form. Like, he's going to do the interview all in gimmick. And we do the interview. Halfway through the interview, he starts insulting me. He starts, throwing this whole 110% heel gimmick at me. And I'm like, man, you got to turn this thing off. And we managed to get through the interview, but the thing was, he was just an idiot. If you're going to do an interview and you're a heel, that's fine. You can be a heel. But in my opinion, you can be half and half. I mean, you could call me up and I could be a complete asshole here on air and insult everybody. But, I mean, that's going to be an unprofessional interview. I mean, if you want to be a heel, you can be a heel. But there has to be a line drawn, between being a heel and being who you actually are. And I think that Jimmy Jacobs can't do that. I don't think there's a way for him to be a normal person, because he lives what he does. And if he can't do that, then he shouldn't be in this business. There's another guy out there, Mike Modest, who told me I'd never make it, who told me I'd never amount to anything because I didn't know how to do an interview in his opinion. He came on my show. He started, putting over other radio shows. He started telling me that I'd never amount to anything, or I'd eventually make it somewhere someday. And, all Mike Modest really did was be featured in Beyond the Mat. And they documented how he never made it to WWE. And that's a success story? You're somebody because you got turned down by WWE? And then you turn around and then you start talking about how other people need to be more professional? Like, in my opinion, you need to go back to your moms and live there. And not try to be a wrestler, right? Because, I mean, there's a line that you need to draw between being a wrestler and being an everyday person. And if you can't do that, then you shouldn't be in the business. Now, some of my favorite interviews, well, the Lacey Von Erich interview I did. I mean, Lacey Von Erich was a sweetheart. I mean, she was an absolute sweetheart. She got emotional during the interview when we talked about her dad, and a couple of times I thought she was going to break down and cry, but she was an amazing person. I mean, television do these divas no justice. I mean, you have to meet some of the divas or knockouts in person to really, get an idea of who they really are. Lacey Von Erich was a treat for me to do and present on show 228. And to be honest with you, I'd interview her again any day. I mean, there are a number of people that I enjoyed interviewing. Lacey Von Erich, Diamond Dallas Page, Dave Hebner was always fun, C.W. Anderson. Everybody brings something different. And I think that if you connect with these wrestlers and realize, what separates them from everybody else, and can ask different questions to get the good answers out of them, you're going to get a good interview no matter who you interview. I mean, I could sit here and talk about how I loved interviewing Terry Funk. I loved interviewing the Honky Tonk Man because he could separate being the Honky Tonk Man and being Wayne Ferris. Jimmy Snuka could separate being Jimmy Snuka, who jumped off of a steel cage on top of Don Morocco, into being the father of Tamina and a family man. Jim the Emil Neidhart could separate being a member of the Hart Foundation. Paul Ellering realized that after 10 years, he shouldn't manage the Legion of Doom. And he should just start up his own restaurant. There are so many wonderful people who I could put over here, and there are so many pieces of shit. But in all honesty, I think everybody's different. Everybody has their reasons for being different.
Absolutely, and yeah, and my mother always...
They're all wonderful people, Dave.
Yeah, and my mother always used to say, just because one person's ignorant doesn't mean you have to be as well, and I've lived by that forever, and it's helped restrain me from going across someone's counter and punch them in the face. So it's definitely something to look back on and bite your tongue with. So
if I can just throw out a piece of advice here for everybody who wants to start up their own show or who wants to, make it somewhere in this business. Roland Alexander told me one time, he said, you have to be a prick in this business if you want to make it anywhere. You don't necessarily have to be a prick. I've been a nice guy all my life, and I amounted to over 800 interviews and met some very wonderful people, yourself included, Dave, who always came through and gave me an interview. And the thing is, these interviews that I've done and these people that I've met are unbelievable. And if you can connect with the wrestler and you can bond with them and understand them for who they are, you're going to get shut down sometimes, yes. I mean, Candice Michelle told me that I was probably the most unprofessional person she ever met in her life. And now where did that get Candice? Candice is home now, unemployed, with no work. I think that if you can respect somebody, they're going to respect you back. You don't need to be a prick. You don't need to present yourself for somebody you're not. I mean, all these radio show hosts out there go by these stage names. You got Phil Jones, you got Jackie Jones, and in your head, you got Your Mama Jones, you got, everybody goes by the same stage names. You got nobody trying to be different because everybody's trying to be the same. I went by Jonathan Clarke for years on my radio show. I didn't cover it up with some catchy stage name or, I just came on the air. I said, I'm Jonathan Clarke. This is what I do, and this is who I am. And if you can do that and not hide behind a stage name, then you're going to amount to something. So just be yourself. Present yourself for who you are, and have a formula, and have a good time. And if you can do that, then you're going to amount to something. So that's the best advice I can give to anybody.
Oh, not bad advice indeed, to definitely be yourself, because, I mean, you've interviewed me a couple times, and I'm not a prick, and I haven't been intentionally a prick to anybody, but,
no.
I mean, and I've been told the same thing, and, everybody has their own way around everything, so.
Yeah.
It's definitely as to how you work it,
It is, yeah. And another thing too is when you're getting involved with the wrestlers and you're interviewing them, you have to be prepared for almost anything that they could say to you. I mean, I sat down and I interviewed Doink the Clown for 45 minutes, and out of nowhere we go from talking about his feud with Crush to how he had to battle all these personal demons, and how he had to overcome it, and how he, almost lost his life, and this and that. And then I interviewed Jeff Jones, the former manager of Mike Awesome. Out of nowhere, he starts talking about his suicide, and then, you have to be prepared for these people, because sitting behind a microphone, sitting at a desk, and listening to these people talk about how they almost committed suicide, or how they took up Oxycontin in Andrew Martin's case, or did some kind of drug. You have to be prepared for what they're going to say to you, because just as much of a toll that it took on them, it will take on you. Sitting there listening to it is not for the faint of heart, I'm going to tell you.
Absolutely. And, I used to work in the funeral business as well, and, there's many different, and there's more businesses than those two that, wrestling and, anything to do with anything. You need a certain a stomach and a certain heart for it.
Oh, you do. You do. And if you don't, then you need to go work at Walmart and be a Walmart greeter, playing the guitar or shaking people's hands. Because
Oh, you're dealing with enough crap over there, please.
I mean, it's better listening to somebody come up complaining about how their PlayStation 3 blew up than, listening to Terry Funk talk about how he was thrown through a flaming table,
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's another thing, too. I mean, people listening to the show probably think me and you are like famous people who got lots of money. I mean, that's not the case. I mean, tomorrow you could bump into Jonathan Clarke working at your local video store.
Yep.
Like if I went up to tell somebody, hey, last night I interviewed Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Last
They'd be like,
night
who?
last night I did the memorial service for Andrew Martin. The next week I'm going to interview Rob Van Dam. Nobody'd ever believe you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what, going back to what I was saying, it's all about separating, wrestling from reality. And I think that, when you hear them talk about reality and stuff, it's just amazing,
Yeah, they're people too,
It is, and that's something that you have to learn to accept, because it's unbelievable how, you can go from talking about something so uplifting to listening to somebody